Have you ever looked at your own composition and thought, there is just something off about the flow of it? Well, you might be dealing with a compositional tangent. A devious, evasive visual point in your composition that more than often bothers your eyes and can in many cases screw up the flow of your composition. Tangents have their homes in many faculties and subjects, but in the art world, a tangent is a point or indication that two or more things are touching one another. Now sometimes this isn't bad per se, but more often than not, a tangent is not voluntary, and that is where they become a hassle to deal with. So let's take a look at a couple of tangents and how we can possibly fix them. Parallels. When the edges of two objects run parallel to one another, it gives the composition a stale look, as one object might appear to be somehow fused with the other. Put one of the objects at a different angle to counter this. Edges shared with frame. When the edge of an object touches the edges of a frame, the image tends to look crowded and confined. Give the object a bit of space to allow the composition to breathe, by pushing the cropping at some distance from the object that the frame is fused to, or crop further inside the object's mass to remove tangents. Shared edge. When the outline of an object aligns directly with the outline of another, it appears that the two objects are one, and can make it hard for the viewer to correctly distinguish between the two objects. Make a clear division of the two objects by moving either of them to disconnect the two outlines. Object tangents. Just like the shared end to frame tangent, objects which edges touch can create a busy and divided look. Nudge your objects in either direction to make sure that their edges don't touch, either by having them overlap or by spreading them out in your composition. Shared outline. When two objects' edges share the same direction and position, it can look like the two objects are merged into one. Shift your angle or point of view, or move one object or the other to break with this tangent. Sprouts. Shapes appearing behind your object dead center can make them look like they're sprouting from your character or object. If this is not intentional, move the shapes in one direction or the other to make sure their origin point disconnects from the object's center. Obscured edges. If an edge of one object is obscured by another who faces the same directional orientation and position, we can lose track of the obscured object and think that the two merge into one. Additionally, it also makes the obscured object appear to be cut off behind the object in front. Move the objects so that the edges of the individual object is visible to the viewer, either by moving your point of view or distance the location of both objects further apart. Divided peak. When a shape is divided by the apex of another, it gives us the illusion that the object being split is divided somehow, prompting us to think that there should be some sort of symmetry between the two halves. Move either of the objects till the two apexes no longer align. The center split. Dividing a shape that's otherwise meant to appear symmetrical near the halfway point gives off an unnatural feeling of the object in question being split down the middle, and doesn't exist outside the composition's framing. You can prevent this by nudging your crop away from the object's halfway point to create a more natural cut. Additionally, don't ever crop your characters by their joints. Always aim for at least a third crop of said joint's corresponding limb. Say, instead of cropping the character by the knee, crop them some inches up the thigh. As for objects, don't crop an object over any of its apex shapes. That is a lot of things to look out for, but don't worry, you'll be hard pressed to find anyone who can list them all on top of their head. In fact, you're probably more likely to be able to detect them subconsciously in the future once you've been vigilant about them for a little bit. Cause with tangents, knowing is half the battle. And even when you've been aware of them for some years, you're probably still going to find the occasional tangent in your work. The trick is to put your drafts and sketches away regularly and make sure your eyes are fresh when you return to them, so you can pick up the tangents that you've become blind to when initially drawing them up. It's part of the reason why I never go directly from sketch into line art on the same day. I'm just too blind to accurately detect any possible tangents. I hope this episode has been somewhat worthwhile. Tangents aren't the most talked about problem in the art world, but after having read through a couple of articles on the matter and having been low-key aware of them for a good while, I figured it was worth sharing with you all. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Chatterbucks. Don't forget to drop by the Redline Station on Tumblr or Art Central on Discord and drop a comment with what you want to see on this podcast next. And remember, we still have slots open for portfolio feedback. So simply shoot an email to this address and I'll put you on the list. See ya next time. And can in many cases of your viewer when the outline of one object aligns directly with the and can give the hard viewer a time